Hello, my name is Julie James, and I'm the Director of Green Wisdom Herbal Studies in Long Beach, California. And I was just making some Usnea tincture, finishing some Usnea tincture for my classes tomorrow, and I thought I would share some of the information on that for you because it's a really fascinating plant to work with in so many different ways for so many different reasons. And so I thought it would just be a fun thing to discuss with you real quickly. So Usnea is a lichen. It is sometimes called old man's beard, and it's a plant that likes moist, cool forest environments. It tends to grow on conifers, on oak trees, that type of environment, occasionally on Rosaceae tree family members. It doesn't grow much here in Southern California. It's too dry, it's too hot. It's just not an environment that likes. We may have some isolated pockets of growth up in the mountains, but generally where I go, I don't see it here. I see it in abundance up in Northern California, and that's generally where I harvest it from when I have the opportunity to be up there. And when I don't, I buy it from a supplier that I trust. So lichens are fascinating. We don't have a lot of information on historical usage of this because until relatively recently, lichens were all considered to be one plant, and there wasn't a whole lot of information as to what they were. So there's a lot of kind of theorizing as to, I mean, there was usage certainly before. We just don't really have a lot of written information on it. So Usnea is a lichen, and a lichen is a symbiotic relationship between an algae and a fungus. So in Usnea, we can see them living together in their symbiotic beautiness right here. So this is what Usnea looks like. It'll grow anywhere from a couple inches up to 12 to 18 inches long, big, beautiful strands of the lichen hanging off of the trees, looking like that. And now there's a lot of things that hang from trees, right? And many people misidentify Usnea. So the primary identification characteristic here is that it is a stretchy plant. You can really just kind of bounce it around. It's very, very elastic. And if you pull it, there's a white cord on the inside that will be exposed, and it's a very stretchy, very elastic white cord. That white cord, there's a larger strand, and we might be able to see it even a little bit better here. I think you probably got the idea, but there you go. So this outer portion, the green outer portion, is the algal exterior, and the algae provides for the lichen organism. The algae is green, it has chlorophyll, so it can photosynthesize and so create energy that way. And the fungus, which forms the elastic interior, it provides structure and some protection, and it also has the ability to hold moisture. And some people think that it also has the ability to absorb and use some nutrients. So that relationship between the two of them forming the lichen is mutually beneficial, and it's kind of cool. So there are about 600 different species of Usnea. And from what we understand, most of them are going to be medicinal. The official species generally that you see on the market is Usnea barbata, but again, there are many of them, and as long as it does the elastic test, you've got a Usnea. So medicine making with Usnea, you can You can use it in a number of different ways. The constituents are not terribly water soluble, so making a tea from it is not the best use of this medicine. And so you really need to be mindful of how you make your medicine. Um, I really like making a tincture, and so tincture is generally what I prefer. Um, and the way that I make my tincture is a double extraction process, which I learned from Stephen Herod Buhner, and many people use it. There are a lot of different ways to make medicine, and really, as with anything that you're learning in herbal medicine, you're going to read many different ideas and concepts and theories and preferences from herbalists that you really admire, just love as teachers, and they will be holding opposing viewpoints, and you're going, well, which one do I believe? And really what you need to do is test them by yourself, make the medicine and see how it works for you, what works for you. We all of us who are teaching and writing and sharing the information that we know have filters in place, right? And when we learn, that learning goes into my head and comes out my mouth as what I have taken from my learning, and I am sharing it with you. But because it's gone through that filter, what I am excreting, isn't that a lovely visual there? What I'm excreting to you is not the whole of the story, because none of us have the whole of the story. So your job as students, our job as students, because we're all students, we're all hopefully learning all the time, is to get as many streams of information as possible, learn as much as possible from many different people, get different teachers. You're not going to be able to use all that you learn. Some of it you're just going to go, yeah, no, that's kind of crazy talk and I don't want to listen to that. And some is going to be really valuable to you. The crazy talk that you left behind is going to be really valuable for stuff for someone else. So just take it all in, sort through it all, filter it out, and end up with what you need to learn from your teachers. All right, that being said, the method that I've come up with making tinctures seems to work really well for me. And without a HPLC breakdown of the constituents, with usage of the product, it seems to be quite effective, and I'm happy with it. And so I'm not going to change. So no water. Usnea doesn't like water, not really helpful to make a tea or a low alcohol tincture. What Usnea likes, it likes alcohol, it likes some water, it likes oil, and it likes heat. It really likes heat, and heat is a liberator of the constituents in the Usnea into the menstruum that you're using. So we always want to apply heat whenever we're extracting Usnea medicine. So I take the Usnea and I grind it up. When you're grinding the Usnea, remember that long, stretchy, those long, stretchy fibers. If you just throw this into your blender or your coffee grinder or your Vitamix or whatever you're using, this is going to wrap itself around the blades and it's just going to kind of stick there. It's very hard to grind this to a powder, and you do want to reduce it down. It's a fluffy, fluffy plant. If I had 3 ounces of the plant material here, it would be as big as my head. It would be this big. So you need to reduce it down so that you're able to cover it with your menstruum, and you need to reduce it down so that you can expose more surface area to the menstruum to be extracted. So what I do is I take my dried plant. I'm not going to soak it before I make medicine. This is really just for you to see. It's easier to kind of show that stretchiness when it's hydrated. So I'm going to take big bunches of the dried plant material, and I'm going to chop it up. And it chops very easily. Use some garden snips. And just chop it up into smaller sizes. It generally tends to be in strands like this. So if you're cutting this way, you're cutting against the grain and making very small pieces. And that way, they're not going to be long enough to wrap around the blades. Grind it up, make a fine powder with it, and then you're going to add that fat powder. The ratio of plant material to menstruum is a 1:5, standard 1:5 ratio. So for every 1 ounce of the dried plant material, you're going to have 5 ounces of your menstruum. The menstruum recommendations generally tend to run from 50 to 65%. So somewhere in there is where you want your alcohol percentage to be. You don't want it to go under 50% because then you've got too much water in there and you won't really get extraction of the constituents. So 50 to 65% is where we want to get. So I like to shoot for that 50%. Number one, the math is easy. And it seems to work again. So grind up the plant material until it's relatively fine. What you'll find is that that algal exterior tends to powder very, very nicely. And the fungal interior is going to kind of form a fluff. And that's okay. That's fine. It'll reduce way down. Throw that into a pot and add half of your water. So if you have 5 ounces of Usnea, you're going to chop that up and grind it up and pop that into a pan. You're going to add your total menstruum in a 1:5 ratio. For 5 ounces of herbs is going to be 25 ounces of total menstruum. And at 50%, we're going to have 12.5 ounces of alcohol and 12.5 ounces of water. So I'm going to throw 12.5 ounces. Actually, usually I'll bump that up just a little bit because there is going to be some loss because we're going to be decocting it. We're going to be simmering it for a long time. So generally I'll throw in about 14 ounces. Cover it with water, bring it to a boil, and let it simmer for a little while covered because you don't want to lose too much of the water. It's okay to lose some. We're expecting to lose some, but we don't want to lose too much. So you're going to simmer that for, now Stephen recommends letting it digest, long, slow extraction over heat for 48 hours. I don't think that's necessary. So I'll generally do 45 minutes to an hour of low, slow heat, simmering that for a while, and it gets kind of mushy. You're just kind of, you've got this green mush that has a really lovely smell. It's kind of a hay, a sweet hay, and a little bit of seaweed. Lovely, lovely, very pleasant fragrance there. So you simmer that for a while, covered for 45 minutes to an hour, and then put that into a container. And now you've got a hot decoction of the plant material and the water that you put into your container. Then you're going to have an equal amount, 12.5 ounces of a 190 proof alcohol. I'm not going to go into the math right now for how you would figure the alcohol content for lower percentages. If you want that, email me and I'll give you a rundown, or you can go online and look. Lots of people teach that, but I'm already rambling on too much and I don't want to go down that path right now. So I'm going to add 12.5 ounces of pure alcohol. I use the organic cane alcohol from Alchemical Solutions. It's a relatively inexpensive and very high quality non-grain alcohol, because some people want non-grain, so I'm going to offer non-grain. So I put the alcohol in here while I've got the hot decoction. So I've just taken the hot decoction off the heat, dump it in here, and then I put the alcohol in here. So I've got the heat from the decoction is applied to the alcohol. So I've got hot alcohol, and that's a safe way to heat up your alcohol. You don't want to be heating up alcohol over a flame or even over any type of a heating element. You're just kind of asking for trouble and possibly explosions, which are troubling. So pour the alcohol in there. The residual heat from the water will heat that up. And that's fine. You've got that kind of hit of heat. And then you let it sit for 2 weeks. So shaking every day, standard behavior for making tinctures. I wish I hadn't done that because I was going to show you. All right, that's okay. So at the end of 2 weeks, this has been 2 weeks that it's been macerating. So I've got my Usnea tincture that I'm going to be pressing today for my class tomorrow. And because I did the double extracting as a decoction and then adding the alcohol, I've gotten a wider range of constituents than would be available had I just made a simple tincture. Having said that, many really good herbalists make it as a simple tincture. I just think that mine is better than theirs. So do as you like. If you're making an infused oil, Usnea makes a great infused oil because it's primarily used as an antimicrobial agent. It's antifungal, it's antiviral, it's antibacterial. And we don't really like to use that terminology and that mindset too often. That anti, kill everything. But that's what this does, and it doesn't indiscriminately kill all bacteria, but it has a very effective. It's very effective against a wide range of pathogenic bacteria without completely disrupting all of the beneficial bacteria in the gastrointestinal tract. In fact, it's kind of rather soothing to the gut. And it's vulnerary, it's wound healing. It doesn't have kind of the intensity of some of the other really strongly antimicrobial herbs. So it is both more effective and also gentler. So it's a really nice medicine to use that way. If you're infusing it into oil, I do like to grind it into a powder, and then I do a pre-treatment with just a small amount of alcohol, the high-proof alcohol. I'll just barely dampen the plant material with the alcohol and let that sit for 24 hours. And that way I've got the alcohol in contact with the plant material is starting to kind of break the bonds of the usnic acid and the other constituents. And then I pour the oil on, and then I'm going to heat the oil with that little bit of alcohol in there. So I've got the heat because we need heat when we're making Usnea medicine. So I've got the heat, I've got the oil, which is our primary solvent, and then I have a little bit of alcohol as an intermediary solvent to improve the extraction of the constituents, the migration of the constituents from the plant into the oil. And that again makes a really, really good product. I don't want to use an oil when I am dealing with an infected wound, because an infected wound, we don't want to use a salve or an oil over. We're going to create an anaerobic environment where anaerobic bacteria can thrive if we do that. And so non-infected wounds, Usnea salve is fabulous for stimulating healing of the tissues and ensuring that it remains non-infected. Lovely, lovely for that. For an infected wound, I would either want to use the tincture as a wash, would be wonderful. A little bit of salt in there because I think salt water as a wash just makes everything better. And a couple of squirts of the tincture into the water, and that's going to be a really nice wound wash or a soak. But one of the ways that I also like to use it is as a powder. So as I grind the Usnea to make any of my other medicine, I take some of that powder. I've got the little fibrous fungus, the fungal center, the core, and so I want to chop that up more and get that as powdered as possible. Also, it's a little bit more difficult. But sift that, and what I have is a very fine powder. And that fine powder is really nice to dust into wounds that are infected or that you want to ensure are not infected. It is a very strong styptic, so it's going to stop the bleeding immediately and create kind of a protective layer, and it is going to be a very strong antimicrobial. And it's not going to create an anaerobic environment. You're still allowing some oxygen in there, some breathing. So it's a safer treatment to use for a wound. You don't want to put powders on deep wounds, on puncture wounds. For those, really, we just want to soak. You want to use the tincture in water with some salt and soak it there. So those are my primary ways that I use Usnea as medicine, as an infused oil made into a salve, as a tincture, as a powder. And I think that's about all I have to say about Usnea. So I hope that's helpful to you. I want to do more of these types of videos because I tend to teach better talking than writing. I write well, it's easier to talk. So if you want more, if you want any videos on any particular plants or methods, medicine making methods or concepts, ideas, leave a message and I am happy to make more for you. So this was my first one. It's an experimental. We'll see if this works well for us, and fingers crossed that it does. Thank you very much. I will see you soon. Bye-bye. Maybe not.